Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Wednesday, June 28th, 2017. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Those of you hoping Dave Biddle came back early from his vacation, sorry. It's me. Today I will be joined by the lovely and talented Alex Gleitman, coming to you from the Big Apple. Alex, the Gem City, crisp, clear day, great run of weather here. How goes it in Manhattan?
It goes the same. Beautiful weather. Word on the street is Phil Jackson will be out as the head guy in the New York Knicks front office, which has a smile on my face. So everything's good in the Big Apple here.
Yeah, woke up to that news as well. That's some big news to wake up to, though definitely good for Knicks fans. Man, that job chews up legends. Larry Brown, Phil Jackson, Isaiah
Thomas.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who it is.
Yep.
So, Lord knows who you're going to get next. Good for the Wizards. Anyway, speaking of big names, yesterday, we should touch on this before we move on. The number one running back in the country, according to 24/7 Sports, Zamir White, out of North Carolina, a player Ohio State recruited heavily, and at one point in time, it did look like they had a real shot at. Instead, opts to attend the University of Georgia. Most reports are his mama did not want him to leave home or go too far away from home, and Georgia won out. On the Ohio State side, it does seem like the addition of Master Teague was kind of the bird in hand last week. How do you assess the situation? Do you think Ohio State came out ahead in the end, and what's your vibe on the White recruitment ending yesterday?
Well, I wouldn't say they necessarily came out ahead because Zamir White was the number one running back on their board in this class. That said, they certainly came out in a very good spot. They landed Brian Snead last summer at Friday Night Lights. Absolutely love that kid. And then, as you said, I think a combination of Master T just being too good to pass up, knowing they could get him and knowing they potentially would lose him if they didn't take him when they did. And then B, knowing that Zamir White likely wasn't coming to Ohio State at that point in time, led them to take Teague. And I think they have two excellent backs. They have Jalen Gill as an H-back. And, you know, I think that's a great class. You can end it there. But I do think Ohio State's going to continue to recruit Zamir White until National Signing Day. I think at one point, as you mentioned, Tony Alford definitely thought he was going to get Zamir White. I think, and I do believe that at one point, Ohio State was the number one choice for Zamir. But as you said, I mean, you know, I think his mom wanted him in the South. I think Georgia was her personal favorite. And while I don't think mom necessarily made the decision for Zamir, I think she's a very influential person in his life. From what I gather, I don't know if there's a father in the picture or whatever, but I know the mother is the influencer in that household. And, you know, he holds her opinion in high regard, and it's not like the kid himself didn't like Georgia. So personally, I was never someone who had Ohio State ever as the pick for Zamir. I think Ohio State was making a move, but you know, I kind of thought it was always Georgia. So I think Ohio State definitely did the right thing in taking Master Teague and closing the class with him, Brian Snead, and then Jalen Gill at the H.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been silly to kind of walk away from Teague if they already knew White was off the board. And from what we understand, he was. And I guess even from the White family, Georgia is not a program that is thriving right now. But they have had great success at running back, no matter who's been the coach or whatever. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt there and move on. Obviously, it does not appear to be. There will be a lot of complaints when it comes to this recruiting class, which is a good segue into our second kind of topic here, which is the opening, the annual gathering out in Beaverton, Oregon, at the Nike headquarters that draws the who's who of high school football. There's literally, excuse me, as I was preparing to ask questions about this, there's too many people from Ohio State. There's too many storylines to cover it in this BM5-ish. If you go look at the rosters, Ohio State is by far the dominant team in terms of those who have committed that are attending and those who are in the mix. just give me a few things you'll be looking for in terms of specifics when it comes to Ohio State related items.
Yeah, well, I think the number one thing for me, and this may not be as sexy of a pick as some other things when it comes to recruiting the uncommitted guys and whatever, but I want to see Seven Banks, the cornerback from Orlando. I want to see how Seven Banks performs this weekend. I think he is a guy who missed all of last season, his junior year, with a torn ACL. And so because of that, maybe he's a little bit lower in the rankings than what his skill level and talent, or at least what Ohio State thinks of him, really is. And, he's fully healthy now. He put on a show at the opening regional with incredible testing numbers. He's put out some great videos showing his workouts and that he's fully back to speed. So if he has a good weekend, that's going to be something that's talked about. And Barton Simmons mentioned him as a guy who can potentially move up the rankings. And with that, I believe there's a secondary. I forget what team they're playing for on the opening. It's
Team Vapor.
Yep, Team Vapor. So it's Woodby, Josh Proctor, Seven Banks, and then Anthony Cook, who I feel right now Ohio State leads for, all in the secondary. So you could be looking at a Buckeye secondary. Of course, they have to keep Proctor and Woodby in the mix here before signing day. But that's definitely going to be something to watch. And then two more things I'm kind of looking for. Jalen Gill, kind of the same deal as Seven Banks, a little less severe, coming off a season-ending injury last year. He's been looking really good in camps and combines and things like that. And I think he's going to open some eyes. I think he's going to put on a show in the testing and with some open field moves and things like that. And then kind of the last thing is just, the uncommitted guys and seeing who's hanging out with that large group of Ohio State commits. Is it Anthony Cook? Is it Jeremy Ruckert? Is it Tyreek Smith? Is it Jackson Carman? I know that Jalen Gill personally has told me that Amon-Ra St. Brown is someone that he's trying to at least get to take a closer look at Ohio State. And then, the Woodby, the Proctor, those guys, are they hanging out with the Ohio State guys? Or are they hanging out with, an Oklahoma guy, USC guys, et cetera, et cetera? So those are kind of my four things that I'm going to be looking for this weekend. I know we're going to have a ton of coverage out there with Bill out there, the rest of our 24/7 national team that's going to be out there. It's going to be a great week on Bucknuts covering the opening.
No question. We could go on forever. If I had to throw my hat in the ring here, a couple things I'd like to see. One, personally, the Gem City's own LaChristian Blue Smith will be out there. I think it's going to be his chance to prove he's a wide receiver against some of the best corner competition in the country. If he does so, I think it will assuage everyone's fears that they got a tight end and an H-back receiver body. So we shall see from there. And then Teron Vincent, obviously, I'd like to see him crush some offensive linemen. If you look at Barton's preview, he basically has Vincent versus Jamari Salyer as the headlining heavyweight inside battle. But this is going to be a thing where you're going to have, I think you brought it up, the recruiting aspect of this. There is strength in numbers, and Ohio State is by far the most well-represented team out there. And like you mentioned, our coverage will be tremendous. For those looking for familiar names, you're going to have Bill Kurlick out there, Steve Wilpon, et cetera. So the coverage should be incredible, and we're really looking forward to it. We're going to shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit of hoops. Obviously, Chris Holtmann now in the mix. Alex and I were talking about this. Already you can tell that it's hard to say, but if you can tell the recruiting strategy is different from this crew. I think their targets are a little bit higher up the board. What's your vibe on how things have gone so far in terms of the approach to recruiting? And it does seem that they are not working with the albatross that was Modest Health.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the first thing you notice, there's a lot of energy, a lot of buzz around the program that maybe had been missing for a while. But I also think that was kind of Thad Matta's MO from the start. I think, things were always kept a little bit more quiet, and he wasn't on social media, and his coaches weren't really on social media. And I think you're seeing, a new leaf turned on that front, and just getting younger and more energetic and just more lively and bringing more enthusiasm about the program. And, I was kind of thinking about this over the last week, and I'm not saying expect Urban Meyer like results from Chris Holtmann. I think that's crazy, but I think it's very similar situations when Ohio State transitioned from Jim Tressel styles of recruiting, which worked very well, to Urban Meyer's style of recruiting, which obviously works very well, with Thad Matta and Chris Holtmann. I think they're not necessarily going in for higher-ranked prospects, because obviously Thad Matta brought in a ton of those during his time, especially, the first 3 quarters of his, even, up to a couple years ago, D'Angelo Russell, very highly rated player, brought in to Ohio State, and I think it's more of them that Chris Holtmann's going after. He's casting a wider net. Thad Matta was more selective. He was looking for a very particular type of guy, or they have a smaller pool of targets. They zero in on them, really key on them, and just, recruit them the way that they knew how to recruit. And I think Chris Holtmann, while he's looking for a certain type of guy to fit his program, his style, his culture, etc., he's casting a bit of a wider net, a little bit more of a national net, feeling that, he was able to bring some great talent to Butler and develop a lot of, maybe not as highly ranked talent, but he's got this Ohio State brand behind him with all these resources and everything. And he feels that right now that there's no area of the country that should be untouched, to at least see if guys want to take a look at Ohio State that fit that kind of mold that he's looking for. So I would kind of compare it to that. And I think, you take that with the energy and the social media presence and just the excitement over having a new era in Columbus. And I think, there's no commitments yet. Obviously, Kyle Young kind of counts, but I think you're going to see these efforts, start to pay off over the next few months, and some big-time players looking at Ohio State and taking visits and all that.
Even the guys they're in the mix with, the group is much better on the whole. And as far as basketball recruiting goes, it's not like football recruiting. You don't need to hit on 25 guys in a cycle. You just need to get really 1 or 2, Pied Pipers.
Yeah.
I do like the idea that they brought in Wesson and Young in the first class, and 1 and 2 ranked kids. I think it's absolutely vital that he locks down Ohio. There is enough talent in Ohio in the 3 AAU shoe company teams traditionally for you to field a very competitive roster annually. They cannot be letting the top guys in the state go elsewhere. I mean, I don't think this is a Carlos Bragg, Luke Kennard duo that they hooked, but I do like the fact that they got the 2 best, and they really need to work those AAU programs. I'm telling you, man, the guy they're going to be recruiting against for the next few years, if I've heard in Archie Miller at Indiana, he's already got his tentacles into Western Pennsylvania and Ohio, so that's going to be a challenge to go up against. So we shall see. We appreciate Alex stopping by. He is headed over to Madison Square Garden to get a final glimpse of Phil Jackson, but we appreciate him making some time. Have a good one, Bucknutters.